Somewhere in a drawer, there's a photo of you as a baby. You are smiling in it. Someone you love is holding you up to the camera, and you look perfectly happy to be alive. Here is the strange part. You have no idea what that moment felt like. You were there. It happened to you. But the memory is gone, as if someone else lived those years and simply handed you the body afterward. Why? Think about how odd that actually is. The first 2 or 3 years of your life were the most dramatic you will ever experience. You learned to see. You learned to walk. You learned an entire language from scratch, without a teacher, without a textbook, without even knowing that languages existed, and yet your mind kept no record of any of it. Not your first steps, not your first word, not the face that leaned over your crib every single morning. Scientists call this infantile amnesia. Sigmund Freud gave it that name more than a century ago, and it bothered him deeply. Freud noticed that his patients could not recall anything before the age of 3 or 4, and he assumed the memories were still in there somewhere, buried, repressed, hidden away because early childhood was too emotional to face. It was a dramatic theory. It was also wrong. But the question he asked was the right one, and it took another 100 years of research to get close to a real answer. Here's the first thing you need to know. Babies do form memories. For a long time, people assumed they simply didn't. An infant seemed like a creature of pure present tense, all sensation and no storage. Then, a psychologist named Carolyn Rovee-Collier designed an experiment so simple it feels like a magic trick. She tied a ribbon from a baby's ankle to a mobile hanging above the crib. The baby kicks, the mobile moves, and the baby quickly learns that its own leg is the engine of the show. Days later, put the baby under the same mobile with no ribbon at all. If the baby starts kicking like crazy, it remembers. And they do. 2-month-olds remembered the trick for days. 6-month-olds remembered it for weeks. So your infant brain was recording. It was learning faces, sounds, cause and effect, the entire physics of your little world. The memories existed, and then somehow they were erased. That is what makes infantile amnesia so strange. It is not a failure to write, it is a failure to keep. To understand why, you have to look at the machine doing the remembering. Deep inside your brain, roughly behind each ear, sits a curved structure called the hippocampus. The name is Latin for seahorse because that is what it looks like. The hippocampus is your brain's memory librarian. It takes the events of your day and files them away so they can be found again later. Without it, you can still learn skills and habits, but you cannot store new events. No hippocampus, no autobiography. And here's the problem. When you were a baby, your librarian was still under construction. In the early 2000s, 2 neuroscientists in Toronto, Paul Franklin and Sheena Jocelyn, uncovered something remarkable about the infant hippocampus. In babies, human and animal alike, the hippocampus is producing new neurons at a furious rate, a process called neurogenesis, which simply means the birth of new brain cells. That sounds like a good thing. More neurons, more brain power, right? Wrong. And this is the twist. A memory is not stored in a single cell. It is stored as a pattern, a web of connections spread across thousands of neurons. Now imagine that web is a spider's web strung between the branches of a growing tree. Every day, new branches erupt through it. Old branches shift. The whole structure keeps rearranging itself. What happens to the web? It tears. Franklin and Jocelyn showed that in infant mice, this flood of new neurons was actively wiping out old memories. When they slowed neurogenesis down, baby mice suddenly held onto memories far longer. When they sped it up in adult mice, the adults started forgetting like babies. Read that again. The same process that was building your brain was shredding your memories. Your infancy wasn't lost because your brain was too weak to record it. It was lost because your brain was growing too fast to preserve it. The construction site was so busy that nothing could survive on the walls. But the hippocampus is only half the story. Because even after the construction slows down, around age 3 or 4, your memories from that era are still thin, blurry, and scarce. Most adults have almost nothing before age 3 and only fragments before age 6 or 7. Something else is going on. And that something is language. A psychologist named Patricia Bauer spent decades studying how children's memories develop. And she found that a child's ability to hold on to an event is tied to their ability to talk about it. Memory, it turns out, is not a video file. It is a story. And you cannot keep a story you cannot tell. Two researchers in New Zealand, Gabrielle Simcock and Harleen Hain, proved this in one of the most elegant experiments in the field. They showed toddlers a marvelous device they called the magic shrinking machine. A child would place a large toy into the machine, crank a handle, and a smaller identical toy would pop out. To a 2-year-old, this is basically sorcery, and none of them ever forgot the machine was fun. Months or even a year later, the researchers came back and asked the children to describe what had happened. Here is the eerie part. The children could only describe the event using words they had already known on the day it happened. If a child didn't have the word for the machine back then, the word never attached to the memory, even though their vocabulary had exploded since. The memory was locked in the language of the moment it was made. Your earliest years happened before you had language, so they were recorded, if at all, in a format your adult mind can no longer open. Like a file saved by software that no longer exists on your computer. Do you see what that means? The baby in that photo wasn't failing to remember. The baby was remembering in a language you no longer speak. There is one more layer, and it might be the strangest of all. Before you can have memories about your life, you need to know that you have a life. You need a self, a main character. Researchers can watch this self switch on. Somewhere between 18 and 24 months, a toddler placed in front of a mirror stops treating the reflection like another baby and suddenly recognizes it. That's me. Before that moment, events happened, but they didn't happen to anyone in particular. There was no narrator, and a story with no narrator doesn't get saved. And once the narrator shows up, someone has to teach it how to tell stories. The developmental psychologist Catherine Nelson and later Chi Wang at Cornell found that early memory is profoundly shaped by conversation. Children whose parents constantly reminisce with them, asking what happened, who was there, how did you feel, end up with earlier and richer first memories. Wang found that the average earliest memory even shifts across cultures. Adults in cultures that emphasize personal storytelling and the individual self tend to remember further back than adults in cultures that emphasize the group. Your first memory isn't just biology. It is partly an inheritance handed to you in 1,000 bedtime conversations you also can't remember. So now put the whole picture together. Your infant brain recorded everything, but a storm of new neurons kept tearing the recordings apart. What survived was written in a pre-verbal code your adult mind cannot read. And none of it belonged to a self because the self hadn't been born yet. 3 locks on one door. That is why the first years of your life are dark. But here's the question that should really keep you up at night. Are those years actually gone? Maybe not. In 2023, researchers began finding hints that some infant memory traces may still physically exist in the adult brain. Silent, disconnected, unreachable, but not erased. In animal studies, scientists could reactivate supposedly lost infant memories by directly stimulating the cells where they had been stored. The memory was there the whole time. The brain had simply lost the address, which means the photo in that drawer might be closer to the truth than you think. Somewhere in your head, there may still be a trace of the warmth of being held, the blur of a face that loved you, the sound of your own name before you knew it was yours. You just can't find the door. And yet, in a way, you remember everything, not as scenes, as foundations. The way you attach to people, the way you handle comfort and fear, the accent hiding in your vowels, the ease with which you trust or don't. Psychologists call this implicit memory. Memory that shapes behavior without ever appearing as a picture in your mind. Your first years are not a chapter you lost. They are the paper every other chapter is printed on. Think about what that means for the people raising children right now. A parent rocking a screaming baby at 3 in the morning sometimes wonders if any of it matters, since the child won't remember a single second. The science says the child will remember none of it and be built out of all of it. The events vanish. The shape they leave behind is permanent. There is something almost kind about the whole arrangement. Evolution had a choice. It could give you a brain that finished developing before birth, rigid and fixed, with perfect recall from day one. Or it could give you a brain that stayed soft and unfinished for years, rebuilding itself around whatever world it happened to land in, at the cost of shredding its own diary as it grew. It chose the second. Your amnesia is the receipt for your adaptability. You forgot your first years because your brain was too busy becoming yours. So go back to that drawer. Take out the photo. Look at that baby smiling at the camera and understand what you are actually holding. Not a picture of a stranger, a picture of the author. Everything that baby felt in those vanished years, every hand that held it, every voice that answered its cry is still here, woven so deeply into you that it stopped being memory and became personality. Somewhere in a drawer there is a photo of you as a baby. You will never remember that moment. You have been remembering it with every choice you make for your entire life.